I run a company called Smiley Technologies, and we actually build the back office processing, transaction processing for banks, for community banks. So if you think about, you go to a teller window and cash a check, you go to swipe your debit card somewhere, you do a transfer in your online banking, all of that happens in the background is what we built. A lot of people ask me, are we a multi-generational business? And my answer to that is not really clear. I say sort of. My father started a company back in 1968 called Systematics. And Systematics was really the pioneer to outsourcing data processing for banks. So banks used to have their own computers and overhead resources in a bank, and he thought there had to be a better way to share those resources. That company grew and sold in 1991, the year I graduated high school. He grew it to about 5,000 employees, and it was international, and took it public, so it was a totally different business model. But in 2002, we saw that niche open back up in the community banking space. The vendors that we compete against are multi-billion-dollar public companies. And so my brother and I, in 2002, saw an opportunity with a bank to provide a service business where we were really the intermediary between a core provider and the bank. So we thought we knew the language, and we had a front row seat to my dad's company growing up. And what we found about a year into it, it was kind of brilliant because we had a paycheck coming in from the service business, but what we found was we didn't have any better leverage with those vendors than the banks did. So we kind of probably pretty naively decided we would just build our own, which was a feat. So part of what I want to talk about today are some transitions that I've been through in my life that have caused me to get to a place where one of my employees said to me one day, "Why don't you accept who you are and live that unapologetically?" And so that is where I have come to peace in my life. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of personal stories and a couple of business stories. Bear with me, this first story is hard for me to talk about. So the first thing I need to do, though, before I talk about these stories is to introduce you to some people. First person I want to introduce you to is me, pre-CEO. I was my father's daughter. I was my husband's wife. I was my kid's mother. I was a great and frequent listener. I never needed the spotlight for anything. This is not my cup of tea, frankly. I don't like being out front. I don't like being responsible for everything. But I was good at it. And I genuinely find joy in propping other people up for success. And I have my pilot's license. A little fun fact. This is my father. I told you a little bit about his company. My dad is one of the nicest, fun-loving people you'll ever meet. He's very humble. He fights for what's right no matter what. And the cool thing about him that I saw growing up was that he was the kind of CEO that when he walked in a room, people looked at him as the guy that could solve their problems, not as the CEO in the suit. And so that's what I learned as a kid growing up. I love this tagline, the will-do company with the can-do people. I think that's something that I've always strived to be. And he's 6'5". This is my brother, Vance. We were about a year apart in school. My brother ran our company for the first 13 years after we co-founded it. He's a builder and a prototyper, and he loves to micromanage everything. And so he was great for the first few years of our startup, because that's what you have to have, right, is that real entrepreneurial grit. And he is, the other part of him is he's a great negotiator and always has to win. I would say all this if he were here, and he's 6'6". This is my husband, Jeff. Jeff lost his leg in a farming accident when he was 8, and he has actually overcome adversity in his whole life, way more than any of us probably. He went to 3 Paralympic Games for wheelchair basketball. He's done 25 plus Ironman distance races. He was the first American amputee to summit Mount Everest, and that landed him on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 2017. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson saw him on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and you might have heard the movie Skyscraper that he was in where he played an amputee. He decided Jeff was the guy that was going to teach him how to be an amputee, and so Jeff got to spend a couple days in Vancouver with him, teaching him how to jump off cranes and do things like an amputee. And I got to go to the movie premiere, so that was really cool. And Jeff is 6'2". These are my kids, Grace over there on the left, and I'm going to tell you about her in a second, except she loves anything fast, race cars, and she is a huge Taylor Swift fan. My son Gavin is 16 going on 21. He is wise beyond his years, and he has definitely helped me up my sneaker game. I was telling him about how nervous I was to do this talk, and he said, "Mom, don't worry. Wear your Jordans, and you will be the coolest speaker on the docket." So here I am in my Jordans. And he's 6'3". So as you can see, I've been surrounded in my life by a lot of really successful, smart, wonderful, tall men. Okay, these are some of my employees at Smiley. They are fun-loving, they are smart, and they are dedicated to what we're doing. Our business is a really hard business. It is. You think about your money. You sign into your online banking every day. If it's wrong, we're the people you're going to get mad at. So it has to be right every day, and we have to balance to the penny every day. So I'm humbled to be a part of their team, and I hope you like their smiling faces. These are. Okay, so the first story I want to tell you about is my daughter, Grace. Grace was born December 12th in 2005. I had a really normal pregnancy, nothing, no real issues, except about 8.5 weeks early, she decided to force her way out. Knowing her today, you would think that makes sense. She is, the doctors told us that there was, she was just little. But that her biggest problem would probably be that she was cognitively delayed, but that if we worked really hard, we could catch her up by kindergarten. Okay, so I'm the person, remember, that props everybody else up for success. And so to me, this was just work, right? This is no big deal. I can get therapists, I can get this going, and we will have her caught up by kindergarten. We were about 3 years into starting our company, so I was also running the support and operations side of our company. And then when she was about 4, this is what we saw. So for those of you that don't know what that is a seizure. When this started when she was about 4, we saw a few of these at first, then we saw dozens of these, and then we saw hundreds a day. And she has been through, in her little life, she's 18 now, but she has been through hospital stays, over 21 pharmaceutical drugs. We've been on diets. She's been through vagus nerve stimulator. We even moved our entire family to Colorado to draw medical marijuana for her. She's had drug reactions that caused her to literally burn from the inside out. And she has even, 2 years ago, she had brain surgery, a deep brain stimulator. She was one of the first kids ever approved for a deep brain stimulator for epilepsy. So she's tough, right? Way tougher than any of us, for sure. But she's taught us a lot of things about the world and about who we should be. I'm very lucky that my husband is the hardest worker in the room, probably, and with a disability, he's been able to teach her and push her in ways that probably none of us in this room would do, in a really good way. I think when things like this happen, it took me many years to get there, but one of the things that I learned about myself was I had to go to this really deep, dark place in the worst case scenario, right? So I had to go in my mind to the place of what I was really afraid of to begin to deal with it. And it took me many years to say this out loud, but the question for me was, what if she dies? What if I can't fix this? And so, I'm sorry. So she is, I work with computers, right? So every day, all day long, I work with something that always has an answer. And my job is to find the answer. I can have a $1 billion outage, a $1 billion bank with a penny outage, and I can find it. And this one I couldn't find the answer to. And we still haven't found the answer. And so what we've had to do is really go to that deep, dark place and say, what happens if we can't figure that out? And then how do we begin to live our lives knowing that we probably can't? Jeff makes her walk a mile a day. She does 5K races with us. I'm super excited she's going to be able to ride that e-bike that I won the other night from Radio Flyer. But Grace has taught us, how to enjoy the moon and the stars and butterflies, and she's cognitively probably like a kindergartner. So think about what a kindergartner enjoys in life. That's what she doesn't know when people make fun of her. She doesn't know. So there's real beauty in that. So that's my first transition story. The second one is really about when I became CEO. Let me just paint the picture. It was January of 2016. We were living in Colorado for Grace's medical needs. My husband was preparing for 2 months on Mount Everest. Grace was presenting these new, really scary seizures that we had to have rescue meds for so she wouldn't die. We were living in Colorado, and I didn't have really any support network there. And we had just signed our largest contract ever at work that was going to double our revenue. So one day in January, my brother, who I told you was the micromanager, he literally came into work one day. We were about 20, 25 employees with 3 or 4 customers, and it had gotten to a place where he couldn't micromanage it, and it was driving him crazy. And so he walked in one day and quit. And I was not expecting it. I didn't see it coming. And I was traveling back and forth from Colorado for work, and my dad called me in one day, and he said, he was on the board at the time, and he said, "We think you're the next best option for CEO." Yeah, I hear some gasps out there. It was funny, to me, that wasn't even that big a deal because I was happy being second, right? I was the next best option, and I was okay with that. And so, but my answer to that was no, I'm not doing that. I had enough going on in my life. I did not need to do that. I didn't want to be out front. And my husband, who's the eternal optimist, and my brother and my dad all kept saying, "We think you can do this." And it wasn't that I didn't think I could do it. What really scared me, again, I got to go to that deep, dark place, is how would anybody respect me as the leader of a technology company when I knew nothing about technology? I was not a builder. I was not a programmer. I ran the people side of the business and the operations side. So I had to really deal with that. Everybody convinced me that I could do it and that I should try it. And what I really learned was I wasn't ready to give up on the employees, and I wasn't ready to work for anybody else. So I decided I would try it. I didn't think it was going to work, but I took that opportunity. And what I learned was that if I do it my way, I turned to the employees and I said, "I'm afraid of this. I don't know how to do this. I need your help." I did have expectations for them, and that turned out great. And they set us on a path to really do something really cool. And what I found out was that being CEO is actually if you're a good one, you're the person that props everybody else up. And so it turns out it might have been the perfect job for me that I didn't even know I wanted. So again, I went to that really deep, dark place. This transition turned into one that happened to me, that I actually flipped it and made it happen because of me. Okay, my third story, we're going to call him Bob because I don't feel like I can say his name out loud. You don't know him, but in case it ever gets out on video. Bob was our lead software engineer that actually was hired by my brother. And it was late 2019. He was the guy that was sort of running the Little Rock operations. I was in Colorado at the time. It may have been a little bit before that. But I trusted him immensely. He was my counterpart. He was the leader and really kind of the de facto leader. And I thought I had to have him, right? That he had convinced me I couldn't run this business without him. And the worst part was I believed it. And what I found after I moved back to Little Rock, we began talking, and I was asking him things like, what's your technology plan, and what's the plan for your employees? And we had this one great, really female engineer that I wanted to know her development plan. He kept saying, "I got it, don't worry about it." And I didn't worry about it. And we began to butt heads after I moved back to Little Rock because I kept saying, I want to see it. And there was nothing. So I started peeling back that onion. We started arguing, and it was getting contentious. And he even called me an asshole in a meeting, and I still didn't fire him. So it was one of those things that I was so afraid, that emotion of fear crept back up in me of how do I do this without him? And what was happening that I finally realized was my worst fear of taking over as CEO is, would people respect me as the leader? What was happening was people were losing respect for me because I wasn't dealing with this. And so in early 2020, we all know what was about to happen then, he gave me no choice one day in a meeting, and I fired him. And when he left, he took about 30% of our staff with him. He had really rallied the troops under the covers. We were only about 25 employees at the time, so that was quite a bit of a hit for us. But again, I turned to the employees and I said, I don't know how to do this, but I need your help. And they stepped up in a really big way. I was actually at Gathering of Teams when several of my employees quit. I got the phone call while we were sitting through one of the presentations. And on the way back, on the flight back, I had this idea of we're gonna stop this. They quit about every Friday for weeks. And so one day I called all the employees in, and we can't just close. We work with banks, so we can't just close one day. So I called my dad and my brother and my stepmother, and called our biggest customers and asked for a little grace that day. I took all of my employees and I pulled a bus up outside the office. And I said, we're gonna get on the bus and we're gonna go out for the day and we're gonna play. And I said, but all I'm asking is if you don't think you can be here for the future of this company, because we're not gonna talk about this any longer, don't get on the bus. And we only had one guy not get on the bus. It was our last termination, which was good. And so we cleaned house. They were the people that needed to leave. We got on the bus and we went and we played all day. We went bowling, we went to arcade and had lunch. And it was really a turning point for the company. Everybody that stayed really got on board for the future. So I think, while again, that transition happened to me, I really feel like things like this are what caused it to happen because of me in a really good way. So sometimes I think I'm a neurologist by trade because of Grace. I've spent so many years learning about the brain. And so I really think your brain takes you to a really safe place all the time. And so the way I've learned to fight that is to go to that really hard place and ask myself those really hard questions, because that stretches your brain to think differently. And then I work my way backwards. It usually is never as bad as you can imagine. So that's my lesson on the brain. I'm proud to say that we are 45% women. In a tech company in the banking world, that's kind of unheard of. And I'm really proud of that. A wise woman told us a couple of years ago to not forget your daughters. Pamela Kahn, thank you. I'm one of those daughters that was at risk of being forgotten. And it really is less about the people in your life forgetting you, and it's more about the women don't always know that that's what they want or even should ask for it. And so for me, it took this thing slamming me in the face to say, yes, you need to try this. So keep that in mind. This has worked for us. In 2016 is when I took over as CEO, and I think turning our focus back to the people, letting them tell us how to do this, and admitting who I was and living that unapologetically has worked for us. So in 2022, we celebrated our 20th anniversary. I'm pretty proud of that. And I just encourage you, as you think about your transitions in your life, if you feel like something's like weighing you down or happening to you, just remember that you can do things to actually flip those and let them happen because of you. Thank you.